Hey everybody, Jeremy here from Nobot Studios. I'm back again with another Drawin Stuff video. So welcome. Today I'll be just doing a relaxed work through of some GRIT Galaxies stuff. I've been making progress in the writing of the rulebook, and I just figured that I need to start working on the art. So today will be sort of a test run through just a random monster that I pulled from my sketchbook. So this was actually a pencil drawing that I took a photo of and processed and did some manipulation to it to get it where it is, like as far as the shape. And so yeah, that's where I'm starting here. So I did a test run on some of the ink or the brushes I wanted to use, and I've decided I'm just going to stick with the brush I used for Grit Fantasy, which is just a basic comic ink pen. So yeah, that's what I'll be doing. So today I'm gonna do like a final line work, see how far I get with that, and I want to start working on the coloration and shading and seeing just what I'm going to do as far as how that's going to work out, because I'm kind of uncertain at this time what I want to do with that. So let's just see here if I've got the right size. Probably about close enough, 35 pixels. So this layout here, the setup of the document, is the proper color profile and everything for Drive-Thru RPG. So if this actually turns out to be a good illustration, I could actually use it in the book. So this may make the book, who knows. So, and I did down below here, I started just put it in a shadow just to kind of mimic what is in the books in the fantasy book, and that's probably similar to what I'll be doing in the GRIT Galaxies book. So first thing I'm going to do here, because this is the low quality image, I'm going to drop this shadow out, and then I'm going to reduce the opacity quite a bit so I have something to work over that's easier to see, or easier to see my line work, I should say. So yeah, so I am, let's see, I'm going to do maybe a little longer length on the stabilizer. Yeah, it seems about right. So what I do when I'm working on this stuff is I've got my rough sketch, and then I just decide to, I do an outline first usually, and I'm editing this thing as I'm working. I can kind of see some things that might not be completely right with it. And for starters, I may actually make another adjustment here. I can see this side being the side on the right being a little too far over than I'd like it to be. So minor adjustments, but that's what I need to do. That's what my brain is telling me to do. And if there's some weirdness like here, I don't worry about that. I'm just going to draw over it. Okay, so I'm going to lock that, and then, yeah, let's just start here. So I am excited by the progress of GRIT Galaxies, not only from the writing aspect, but also from the testing that's been done. And yeah, I've got 2 playtest sessions finished, and those have gone really well. I've got another one coming up this Sunday, and several days, but yeah, it's coming along. It's feeling natural. I have done some adjustments for equipment already, but not a lot from the playtesting, but very minor stuff. And yeah, so I've been doing a lot of work. I did a lot of work in the core rules, and I actually finished it. It does require editing, so I'm going to eventually get that to Ryan. He's like the master. So I know I thank you a million times, Ryan, but thank you so much for all your hard work with Grit Fantasy and staying on board to help me with Galaxies, and I think Galaxies is going to be a much easier job. Because of this, GRIT Galaxies is going to be a standalone. It is going to have a lot of the similar things that were in Grit Fantasy as far as the core rules and stuff. I think a lot of that doesn't really need to be rewritten as much. But all the examples and stuff like that will need work. So yeah, so that's what I worked on mostly this last weekend, is getting all those examples up to date and correct. So I'm seeing this creature is like having 4 different sections, really. There's the brain head part of it, and then there's the kind of torso mouth. And then there's the eye stalks and legs. So I'm not sure if I'm going to do kind of different colors for each one of those sections, or if I'm going to do like a solid color over the top, and I don't know, we'll see. Or a solid color like for the whole thing, and then just maybe have 1 or 2 other sections that are colored. If I follow kind of the same structure as Grit Fantasy, then I'll be then 4 colors should be the max. And like I said in other videos, one of my other Drawin Stuff videos, I think it was, that I do like working under parameters. I think it's helpful, and it keeps things consistent. These are these weird little tentacle-like legs. I'm not quite sure about them yet. But again, this is just a initial drawing to see how I'm going to do things here. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Nice thing about this ink brush is that I can kind of taper it, and it's got a nice shape to it. That's kind of what I like about it. It's got a shape that's like kind of like that, like a kind of diamond shape. So you can make these sort of thick and thin lines. Yeah, weird little legs. Actually, I kind of don't like. I'm going to put this thing up here. This is my size adjuster. I can quickly adjust the size of the brushes, which is helpful. So yeah, it's just getting these lines in. Kind of outlining it. It's been a little time since I've done this actually, so I'm feeling a little rusty, but that's okay. I will work through it. So once I get the sort of outline done, I am going to work on the details. That's usually what I do. And the details will be a separate layer, so I can adjust those, erase those, without worrying about messing up the final outline or the main outline, which is very, very helpful if things are weird. Sometimes you do a drawing and you're like, oh, you come back to it and you're like, something's not right there. I need to fix that. And if you got little microscopic lines and stuff, details that are right kind of next to or over the main line, the main outline, it could be a pain because there's erasing involved. All right. Now for these eye stalks. I think I'm going to drop the size down a little bit. I just love sci-fi creatures. Because like I said before, there's none there. I mean, you don't even know what this creature is, so there's no way to judge that it's not supposed to be that way, you know? It could just be anything. Plus, I think it is giving me the opportunity to make some really funny looking creatures that may still at the same time be deadly, which I think is an interesting mix. So yeah, if I have a lot of circles, you will see me doing this like multiple millions of times over and over, which is kind of par for the course for circles. And also long curved lines are a pain, especially if you're kind of got a couple of them that have to kind of pair each other. Can be a pain. That's where the stabilizer tool comes in handy. But sometimes it doesn't matter. I mean, I could draw or pull in some perfectly circular kind of shapes and just put a stroke, like a clear shape with a stroke. But to me, that doesn't look, it doesn't have a consistent look because they're so perfect, and then everything else is sort of like sketchy drawn. It doesn't fit too well together. I mean, there's a time and a place for it, but usually it doesn't look so good, in my opinion. And these nice thick lines for with this brush turn out really well. When they're printed. And what I do with the sizing on these, this is like 4.5 by 4, like actually 4.5 or 4 inches in width and 4.5 inches tall, roughly. It's not exactly. At 600 dpi. So it's a high res image. All right, I'm going to drop down the size a little bit more, I think. Get into this mouth here. I want to kind of cut this in a little bit more. Like his lip, you know. And one thing I've noticed, or I've learned about teeth, if you're putting it in a black mouth where there's no other detail behind it, just black, you want to oversize it because it will actually look smaller once you put the black in. Because you're looking at it with a line around it, but once you put the black behind it, it actually shrinks the teeth a little bit, if that makes sense. So this thing has this giant mouth with teeth, but where's all the food going? That's what I want to know. It doesn't matter. It's just about looking cool and biting stuff. I don't know if I want to put that extra tooth in. I guess I will. And I'll just make a little curvy thing right there. Kind of show that you, there's an edge or there's a lip. Kind of weird. I may have to change that tooth. That's the thing, you can always erase stuff. And one thing I've learned is if you get to a point where erasing stuff is an issue, you always make a copy of your line work to kind of give you a save, you know. Like you can go back to that point if you need to. I think I'm going to do that. And then do this. Yeah, I'm thinking both of these teeth need to go. See, just editing as I go here. Sometimes these sketches are rough and, you know, the composition isn't always the best. Also, like I mentioned before, there's warping that happens when the photo is taken, because you can't get a perfect perfectly perpendicular setup with your phone unless you have some kind of stand, which I don't have. So that'll be good for now. And I don't color fill this. I actually I don't color fill in the mouth. I actually just draw it in because color fill doesn't completely fill in the space. So for this, I can make sure that it's completely filled. You don't want like a little line or spot showing through. So I would love to to have a system down with GRIT Galaxies with the illustration that like a monster would take, I don't know, 2 hours. It would be great if it was 1 hour, but I don't think that's possible actually. GRIT Fantasy I was running at the minimum 3 hours each. At the maximum, probably about 12 hours. So if you have the book and you look at the Minotaur, that was a 12-hour illustration, even though it doesn't look like it. Another thing I do when I have these big thick lines like this, like the ends are rounded, is I can get in there and kind of erase the ends, and it tapers in nicely. And when I get up here in close detail, I can see just how crappy my line work is. You know, things that don't match or line up well, or, you know, if there's a gap or whatever. So I get into that detail stuff. Some people may not bother with that, but I like to have the line work like nice and solid. If you're doing outline work like this, I think it just makes a better image, a better quality image. To take that little extra time and make sure it's all sort of nicely done. See, like right here, that area, to me, that's like a kind of needs a little bit. And a lot of times, you know, these circles are a problem because there's always a start and stop point, right? And they're the same, usually similar point. So there's a point where you lift off the brush and it kind of looks rough. Of course, when you zoom out, you don't see all these details, but since these are images that are going to be fairly large on a page, I do want to take extra care. Okay, I think that I want to do one more thing. I'm going to make this connected part. Let me just zoom out and see if that actually looks okay. Not in love with it, but that's all right. This is a little weird here, but all right. I'm getting close to detail work here. I'm not going to keep you like whatever, you know, for 3 hours. If this takes 3 hours, I'm just going to do an hour. That's going to kind of be my goal for these Drawin Stuff videos. Probably long enough to keep you. You'll probably be asleep by the end of this anyway. All right. And I think I'm going to erase this a little bit here. Just bring it down to the same level as the others. All right, we got the teeth in, we got the outline done. I probably could have gone a little smaller on or a little thinner on the eyeballs. You can always erase them out a little bit. Just because they're a little, they're not as meaty as a tentacle, right? Or like a eye stalk. I think I need to change the stabilizer here. And it don't have to be exact, it just has to be a little thinner looking. I could erase them and redo them, but I'm not going to bother with that. I think I'm going to be a little looser with GRIT Galaxies art this time than I was with Fantasy. And I know for sure I'm not going to do the same level of shading. Like, it's going to be a different approach. Similar, but not the same intensity of worrying about the lighting and all that. I spent a lot of time on that, on the fantasy book. I mean, I learned a lot about it, and I still have a lot to learn. I got better at it as I went, but I realized that if I want to actually get the project done in a reasonable amount of time, I may want to loosen up a little bit on that. Okay, I think that pretty much does it for like the main line stuff. I'm just going to write in main line on the layer. And I like to just lock them if I'm not getting to them. Excuse me, I got my coffee here. And then, okay, we're going to do details. So I'm going to drop down the line. I'm going to start at 15 pixels, roughly. And I just work from kind of thick to thin as far as the brush size go. Got eye stocky things. Do I need to have a theme song for this video series? I'm not a good singer, so it'd probably really be terrible. All right, lips are going in. I'm not going to go crazy on those. I think there needs to be more eye stop stuff, but I'm gonna do that later. Yeah, I'm excited to get Galaxies out there. I'm talking to Ryan about this over Discord. It's just like, it seems like it's a better, like, it's the right fit for me. I ran ICRPG Warp Shell game for a long time, for like 3 years or more, and did about 20 or so sessions. No, more than that. It was almost 30 sessions. And I had so much fun running that. It was just a really good time. I like the idea of having a main ship that the characters are kind of live on. You know, they don't have control over it really. It just kind of does its thing. It brings you to where the danger is, or where the universe needs you, and you just kind of show up. So Galaxies is going to have a similar model. Little differences. They're going to be cryo chambers and stuff like that, and I'm going to put in some rules for like a team locker, so you can like trade gear. The idea is that you're going to have an influx of players, right? So it's not going to be the same group all the time, since GRIT system is all about one-shots and short arcs and episode-based play. I'm really going to put the emphasis on episode-based play. So, yeah, it's going to be set up for that. So the characters will have a spot on their ship. Maybe they might even have their own quarters. But there also will be rules in place for, and these will be optional, but rules in place for like a equipment shop, that you will be able to pick up gear, trade in gear, that kind of stuff. There's not a monetary system in GRIT, and I want to maintain that. I don't really want to have money and like currency kind of stuff that you have to worry about. That to me just gets into minutia of detail. It doesn't matter. When I ran the Warp Shell game, I did come up with like a credit system, which honestly it didn't really work that well. So I think I'd rather just have players kind of get to pick things that they want that are like basic items. So like I just want to make sure that if they are out on a mission and they don't get loot somehow, sometimes that can happen, that they have a way to get like at least basic stuff, like shield capacitors or grenades of some kind or armor, just little small basic upgrades. And these will be like things that are part of the basic gear lists for when you build a character. So what I'm doing currently for that, what I'm testing is just a list that kind of rotates. So there's 10 items on it. And at the beginning of the session, if you're a return character, you could choose one of the things on the list. And when they choose that item, it goes away. And then once everybody selects stuff, like for the next session, it's filled in again. There's another 10 items to choose from. So I think it's kind of a cool thing, and we'll see how it works over the testing period. I just want to make sure people get the chance to get stuff, and basic things. But I probably will be putting in, advice for the GM, kind of what to do with, awarding loot during sessions. Because I do want to, unlike the fantasy book, I want to put a little bit more stuff in about the episode-based play. Because the idea is, you're on a ship, so. That's not to say that you can't run GRIT Galaxies in some other way, but I think it's best to have the sort of home base set up of having a big ship that you're on. So maybe this thing is controlled by AI, or maybe it's just a crew, and you're like the away team kind of guy. You're the guys that go out and deal with stuff. There's people that are running the ship. That are, you're not part of that. Maybe you don't have clearance enough to go to the bridge. Who knows? All right, dropping down the size a little bit more here. I'm just going to go in and start doing some detail work here. A little finer detail as I go. Since these tentacles are sort of bendy, I want to put in some lines. So as you can see, I get in there with the up close, doing details from a distance. I mean, it's good to check it, but best to be close up, or at least reasonably close up, to fill in these. You're gonna like it when I fill in the base color. It's always a magical moment. Polka dots. Everything has polka dots, right? Or little warty things. I think I see this as like maybe not bulbous, but textured maybe. In like a scaly way. If like you look at an alligator. They have these kind of maybe rectangular oval shapes in their skin. It's just a simplistic version of it. But who knows, could be something else. It's an alien. Beep, 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 beep. Alright, just gonna put some in here and here. You can overdo it, so it's not, you gotta know when to stop. And the smaller your circles, you have to adjust the stabilizer if you're using that. And you want to avoid tangency. That's another design thing. Like, you don't want to do this. It looks weird. This looks weird. They want to not be touching or, across from each other directly. Not sure if I like them. Those little lines. Maybe just a few. Now I need the stabilizer back. So there will be 20 grit monsters in Galaxies. There will be 12 scum races, and there will be another 6 humanoid monsters, which are basically taking the lineages and making villains out of them. So there'll be another 6 of those that will be different than fantasy. Everything is going to be compatible with fantasy, so you could take your fantasy stuff and plug it into Galaxies. If you want to run space elves, that is totally possible. So the options are going to be even more vast between the two things. Again, Galaxies will be standalone, but if you do have the fantasy book, you could also use that stuff too. And all the builders and all that stuff will be, I have painstakingly made different than the fantasy version. So all the builders have words that are mostly not in fantasy. So just a little detail that I get into, but maybe most people will not recognize or care. But just try to keep things real, Now I'm thinking that giant circle over on that side needs to be repeated. You're probably thinking, oh man, look at this. Look at all this crazy detail stuff. No one is ever going to look at it. Here's a nice thing about erasing. And when you have a separate detail layer, I can erase right over this line, the main line, and I don't have to worry about it. And since that is not really in the same location as the others, I'm gonna do some adjusting here. See, I'm kind of designing as I go with these sketches. All right, getting close here. And let's see, let's do something needs to be put in here. I think this is where I kind of drop it back a little bit and do some little testing. Yeah, if I don't hit my Control Z just right, it goes to the zoom tool, which is annoying as heck. Like when I'm working through stuff and that happens over and over, if I just hit it the wrong way, drives me nuts. So, this creature may end up in some corner of the book somewhere. Maybe it'll be one of the main monsters, who knows? Part of the fun for me is coming up with the names for these things and what they do. And the really cool thing about the sci-fi stuff is no one has ever seen them before, so they have no idea what they're in for. It's just kind of fun. Exploring strange new worlds and weird creatures. And maybe not all of them are like out to get you. I kind of feel like I want to put some in that are maybe on the more mysterious side of things, because in some of the shows and movies you see, it's not always they're not always absolutely evil. I look at the scum races as being kind of like an evil type thing, or at least troublemaking, mischievous, kind of up to no good. These are weird feet. Do I give him like a weird toe? Maybe I should. Kind of accentuate that a little bit more. Okay. And I think we need a few more of these things, or at least some lines to transition here. See, when you put in a full day of this, your eyes are just really tired. Happened to me a lot with the fantasy book when I was really hammering out the illustrations. And I've learned that you don't want to do too much detail work. You want to leave it a little bit more basic, because if you're putting color in, that could really add detail. It may be too busy if you have too much. Put it in the pupils here. And this I'm going to do with stabilizer, pretty much like minimal. This is where you can make them all looking in different directions, sort of. That's kind of what they would do anyway, right? Getting close, guys. This is one of the last good things. I will then put in a highlight layer over the pupils. Okay, so I'm going to add a layer here and just put in a white dot, which just instantly adds that glossy look of an eyeball without getting into a lot of crazy detail. All right. I want to do a little more maybe in this area. I don't want to overdo it though. Like it just needs some little bits and booblies. Okay, coming up with my own words here. Booblies doesn't sound terribly appropriate. Maybe nibblies. Well, that's the mouth would probably be the nibbly. But little dots. It just needs some dots. Some happy little dots here. And that just gives it a little more movement. Just a little bit of extra texture. Okay, I think I'm gonna call it good here for the texture and stuff. So there we have it. All the line work is done. So what I do after this is I like to name my layers if I can. It just really helps later on if you have any issues with it. And I will group them all together. So now I can move that as a separate thing. So take that sketch layer off. And now comes the magic. So judging by this, I think, 2 hours might actually be possible for these. At least some of them. All right, so I go here, and if I pull up the shadow, you're not gonna, well, yeah, you won't be able to see the feet because I haven't put a layer underneath it yet. So anyway, take the magic wand tool. Oh. This is easiest way to fill backfill an image. First thing I do one layer of white. That makes sure that it is filled behind it, you know, there's a color behind it. And then I'll do either gray or a color. So I think we're gonna put a color in here. I don't know why, but I'm always drawn to blue. I think I'm gonna do some kind of gray blue in a different layer. And this is where I like to drop the background to a different color a little bit. A little too dark. So I'm looking for like a base mid tone color to work off of. That way I can go either direction. I can go lighter or darker. And that's about good. If I wanted to, I could put an adjuster on that, just like I showed you in other videos. Excuse me, and change the color if I wanted to. So it's here that I can go in and start actually coloring things. So my or coloring sections of it. So I always do 4 different like background colors. One is white, one is like a light gray, the other is mid-tone gray, a little darker than mid-tone, and then like a dark, not quite black. So this just helps me see the image differently in color. And if I ever have like an overshoot, like with a color, like if I'm coloring this and I do that, sometimes, you know, with a lighter background, you don't see it as well. This isn't the greatest example, but if I have that, it's really visible and I can go in and, you know, erase that easier if I have to, right? So I usually use the darker mid-tone or darker gray for this kind of work. So, and usually I do like eyeballs first. And I'm just feeling like it needs to be, I'm just doing basic colors here. It needs to be like a yellow. Yeah, that seems about right. Again, these can all get adjusted. And I will make the eyes especially their own layer, because then I can go back later if it's just not meshing well with the rest of the colors. I can change it easy enough. Alright, that looks cool. Now I could go in and do maybe a little darker. On the top. I might not even do that. I don't know. Maybe we'll see. This is just a test again, right? So I don't know how crazy I'm going to get with the shading, but I think the eyes are important. They need to have some depth. But I can just as much like them like this, you know? So I think I need to make it less gray and more of the color itself. And I'm going to put these on it, put this in a different layer. Sort of a greenish yellow, actually. And I am going to group these together. Can't see my keyboard. Alright, okay, next will be, I'm going to do some teeth. And those, again, will be yellow, but I'm going to make them lighter. See how that just instantly pops? Like, I just love that. This is the magic part to me, when the color starts getting in there. It comes to life, doesn't it? And I will mark that down as teeth. Lock those layers. And what do we do with this brain thing? Well, the eyes are yellowish green. I don't know, I think maybe it needs to be closer to the blue spectrum. Just leave it base color. That's always an option. This is where you could like fiddle around with things forever. Like maybe the bottom should be more pinkish. I don't know. I'm thinking it needs to be an orange. Another thing I need to consider too is the value of these things. I need to be consistent, throughout. So am I going to make these things more or less saturated colors? Are they going to be super bright? Or am I going to tone things down? Now I think the printing itself is going to automatically be less saturated. So there's going to be a little guesswork, I think, involved in how it looks in the final result, And I think I'm going to just continue this orange stuff until I get like into the lower leg. That makes sense, like as far as the body is concerned of this thing. And I'm not worried about overshot, doing this, like, because there's a process that I do for that just to make sure that it's all off of there, because you don't want that on there, once the final thing is done. Like, I'm going to go and erase what I can if it's easy to do, but at the very end I can go in and kind of make, do an erase around the whole perimeter of it. And here's the question, how many colors do I go with? I don't want to make it too busy. Kind of like that. So there's going to be a different thing that happens here with the process compared to fantasy, because fantasy was just all grayscale. This is gonna require a different eye because of the color. So actually it may be a little longer because I think once I do 10 or 20 of these, it's gonna become natural and I'll just blow through it. But I think it's gonna be a process to kind of figure out how the colors are gonna flow, like how many are due, how they fit together, and all the adjustments. I'll probably eventually, when I'm far along enough with the project, well, it'll be second nature. I'll just not have to do a lot of fiddling. It'll just be, I know exactly what to do here. Boom, pick the color, it's done. Kind of like it so far. It's this orangish yellow isn't really great, but that's easy enough to adjust out. Yeah, I could spend all day on this. I don't want to keep you guys forever here, but I'll probably go back and adjust it further. I kind of like the tentacles being blue, so I think this brainy thing needs to be its own, a different color. But really, I think the rules will be more about design and less about reality of the creature, because they could be any color really, out in the galaxies. So it'd be more about what colors look good together, and that is not the right color for sure, but good thing it's easy to adjust. Maybe I'll make it like that. So you can see how I can rack up some layers here. don't know. Still not totally happy with it. There's going to be, I need to definitely do some adjustments. But this is just an example and just getting a feel for what is possible for these things and what kind of shading I'm going to do. I think it does need some dimensionality, dimensionality. It needs to be dimensional. It needs to have light. Light and dark shading. I think it makes it more like an actual creature in space. But I don't know. I'm still torn. Do I go like more comic-ish and just not worry about that? I mean, that kind of gets into to a similar thing that I got into with the fantasy, right? Like, now I'm doing shading and worrying about all of that. Even though, I mean, it kind of looks cooler. I don't know. Some things to think about. I think I'm going to have to do a lot more of these just to kind of get a feel for what I need to do, because this is a different kind of project. All right, so just to show you I'm just going to probably wrap this up. I've gone over an hour for sure. So I'm going to do this again. Magic wand tool. And then I can go in and, well, I have to do separate layers of things, but I could basically go in and just hit these layers and delete anything that's inside this selection. Which is very helpful. All right. I think that is about as far as I'm going to get with this thing right now. I wish I could have gone further. I mean, I could spend a lot more time on this. But at some point the video must end. So anyway, I want to thank all of you, whoever has made it this far. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really appreciate you. Stop by, checking out the game, listening to me ramble on while I do some drawing stuff. And if you haven't, check out GRIT Fantasy RPG. I will put a link below. And keep an eye out for future videos. Also, some future videos on GRIT Galaxies will probably be coming out at some point. I want to start doing some design diary stuff maybe, and maybe some real gameplay recordings, which would be fun. So anyway, thanks again. Take care of yourselves out there and roll those dice.